My name is Jasmine Cole, and after a 4-day business trip, I came home expecting peace and quiet. Instead, I walked into a nightmare. The first sign something was wrong was outside my condo. The spare key I always kept hidden was gone. When I unlocked the door, I froze. Shoes that didn't belong to me were scattered across the entryway. A designer handbag sat on my kitchen island. My favorite silk robe, the one I'd carefully folded and tucked away in my dresser, was hanging over a chair with lipstick smeared across the collar. Then my sister, Amber, casually walked out of my bedroom as if she owned the place. A second later, my mother followed behind her, holding a glass of wine. Amber needed somewhere to stay, Mom said with a shrug. The divorce has been hard on her. She needs some space. Amber smiled without a hint of guilt. Your bed is so comfortable, she said before taking another sip of wine. I didn't argue. I didn't raise my voice. Instead, I quietly rolled my suitcase into the guest room, the only room they hadn't taken over, and simply said, well, let's all make ourselves comfortable. That night, after everyone went to sleep, I opened my laptop. By sunrise, everything had changed. I updated the Wi-Fi password, reprogrammed the smart locks, and called my lawyer. The condo belonged to me alone. My name was the only one on the deed, and it had been paid off years ago. There was no lease, no guest agreement, and no legal claim they could use. They expected me to give in like I always had. They forgot I hadn't spent 10 years building my career just to let people walk all over me. The next morning, Mom frowned at her phone. Why isn't the internet working? She asked. I calmly sipped my coffee. I changed the password, I replied. I didn't think you'd be staying long enough to need it. Amber wandered into the kitchen wearing my bathrobe. I'm meeting Cal later, she said. Don't touch my laundry. I almost laughed. Instead, I quietly scheduled a locksmith to replace every lock the following week, choosing a time when both of them would be out. Until then, I watched. Neither of them mentioned moving out. Neither of them thanked me. They helped themselves to my groceries, my wine, my candles. Everything. But I wasn't worried. I had time. I had patience. Most importantly, I had a plan. They mistook my silence for weakness. In reality, I was already several steps ahead. A few days later, I came home to find my living room completely rearranged. Amber had moved the furniture around like she was decorating her own apartment. She was curled up under my favorite blanket while my expensive scented candles burned on the coffee table. From the kitchen, I could hear Mom telling someone on the phone, "We're staying at Jasmine's place for a while." As if I were just a guest in my own home. I didn't confront them. Instead, I quietly photographed everything. Every room. Every personal item they were using. Every sign that they had taken over my home without permission. Then I checked a banking alert. Amber had used my linked grocery account to order takeout. Perfect. I logged into my homeowners association portal and submitted a report about unauthorized occupants, excessive utility use, and violations of building rules. It wouldn't remove them overnight. But it officially started the process. That evening, Amber invited friends over. Music echoed through the condo. People laughed loudly while wine spilled across the hardwood floors I'd spent thousands restoring. What none of them knew was that I'd installed a motion camera near the front door before leaving on my trip. At exactly 1:23 a.m., I backed up every second of the footage. I wasn't collecting memories. I was collecting evidence. Because this situation was about to become much more than a family disagreement. It was about to become a legal matter. By the end of the week, my phone rang. It was the building manager. "Hi, Jasmine," he said. "We've received a noise complaint about your unit. Apparently there was a party Tuesday night, and that's against building policy." I closed my eyes. That was the night Amber invited 4 friends over and turned my living room into a karaoke party while I sat alone in the guest room, headphones on, pretending I couldn't hear the music. The next morning, the building manager called about the noise complaint. "It won't happen again," I said calmly. "I'll take care of it." That afternoon, I printed the HOA rules, highlighted every violation they had committed, and left the pages on the kitchen counter. Amber glanced at them, laughed, and tossed them into the trash. Mom barely looked up. They thought I was making empty threats. They were wrong. Instead of arguing, I filed a formal report with the HOA, documenting unauthorized occupants and repeated rule violations. I had security camera footage, photos, and neighbors willing to confirm everything. Then I made one more decision. I called a home stager. If they wanted to treat my condo like it belonged to them, I'd simply sell it. Amber overheard the conversation and laughed. You're not serious. But Mom didn't laugh. For the first time, worry crossed her face. She remembered exactly whose name was on the deed. When the stager arrived, I had already packed away everything they hadn't touched. Amber was still asleep when strangers began walking through the condo. She stumbled into the hallway and frowned. Who are these people? Potential buyers, I answered with a smile. She burst out laughing. You're not actually selling. I simply walked away. Over the next few days, I met with a realtor, reviewed recent sales in the building, arranged professional photos, and listed the condo. The atmosphere inside the condo changed immediately. I labeled shelves in the refrigerator. I collected every spare key. I wrote one sentence on the whiteboard in the kitchen. Move-out deadline, March 1. No debate. No discussion. At first they ignored it. Then reality started sinking in. Where are we supposed to go? Mom quietly asked one evening while I folded laundry. I didn't even look up. That's not my responsibility. Amber finally exploded after discovering I'd installed a lock on my bedroom door. She pounded on it in frustration. You're being cruel. No, I answered through the closed door. I'm finished. The following morning, my realtor called. We've received 2 offers. Almost overnight, Mom started quietly packing her things. Amber stopped laughing. He finally realized I had never been bluffing. I scheduled the final showing for Sunday morning. By then, I had packed my essentials, forwarded my mail, and rented a small apartment across town. It wasn't fancy, but it was peaceful. And it was mine. Selling the condo had never been my original plan. But keeping it wasn't worth sacrificing my peace. When the buyers arrived, Amber stood in the kitchen holding a coffee mug as though nothing had changed. The realtor happily showed them around. Beautiful natural light, refinished hardwood floors, spacious layout. Mom stood silently by the window. When we were finally alone, she spoke softly. This isn't how family treats each other. I met her eyes. No. This is what happens when family mistakes kindness for permission. She looked away. For the first time, she had no argument. 3 days later, the sale officially closed. I handed them written notice. They had 48 hours to leave. Building security had already been notified in case there were problems. There weren't. Amber spent the next day slamming cabinets, stuffing clothes into trash bags, and stomping through the condo. She never apologized. She never admitted she was wrong. She was simply angry that she'd lost. Mom lingered much longer. She sat quietly on the couch after everything had been packed. Finally, she looked at me. We really ruined this. I stayed silent. You've become so cold, she whispered. I shook my head. No. I'm finally clear. She lowered her eyes. For years, I'd mistaken guilt for love and obligation for family. Not anymore. That clarity had cost me money, time, and a home I loved. But it gave me something far more valuable. Freedom. After they left, I walked through the empty condo one last time. The rooms echoed. Everything was still again. Before locking the door, I left a handwritten note on the kitchen island for the new owners. Asterisk, may this home always be filled with respect, gratitude, and peace. Then I walked away without looking back. Some people never leave until you remove the ground beneath them. Sometimes the strongest goodbye is the quietest one. 4 weeks have passed since I handed over the keys. The condo is gone. That chapter is over. What remains is peace. Not the heavy silence of constantly walking on eggshells, but the comforting quiet that comes from living without manipulation, guilt, or unwanted guests. Last week, Amber posted a photo of an empty wine glass online with the caption, asterisk, some people forget where they came from. I didn't respond. She can tell herself whatever story helps her sleep at night. It's no longer my concern. Mom sent one short text. Asterisk, hope you're doing well. I never replied. I've learned that real distance isn't measured in miles. It's measured in boundaries. Today I live in a bright apartment that smells like fresh paint and lavender. I light my own candles. I wear my own robe. I sleep peacefully every night. They tried to make themselves at home in a place they never owned. Now I finally live in a place no one can take from me. No shouting. No drama. Just peace. Just freedom.